you lose everything if you have a child, if you are in the Sea Org and indeed in other parts of Scientology. So my plea to Senator Betts is that if you're concerned about that, rather than a he said, she said approach, if there are genuine concerns that are raised, let's look at that whole issue of coerced abortions, whether our current criminal law in terms of psychological harm and other related matters is adequate. And in terms of harassment, I think Senator Betts made the point that if you leave a political party you can be harassed, and I saw some of the treatment that that two Labor members in the Legislative Council of the South Australian Parliament got when they left the Labor Party, and I'm sure it happens when you leave other political parties on both sides of the fence. But I think the harassment can be a bit of abuse, a bit of vilification. What we're dealing with here is where people are followed around the clock, where they have people directly in their face, where they are photographed, where one man this morning outside the front of Parliament House told me how he had his house under siege for 10 days, where there was either a car out the front, he was followed, and that is not an uncommon story. And I don't think anyone can reasonably say that former members, that any major mainstream political party will do that to their former members. They might give them some stick and a bit of grief, but nothing like this systematic abuse of people's rights. So I want to thank again the senators and MPs and staffers who have taken the time this week to talk to victims of Scientology. One of the main reasons why so many victims tell me they want an inquiry into allegations of abuse within Scientology is because they believe there is some sort of therapeutic benefit in speaking out. As they emerge from an organisation that's very existence appears to rely on secrecy, they say they achieve real benefit from having someone publicly acknowledge their suffering. But, Madam Acting Deputy President, it's much more than the therapeutic benefit, that cathartic benefit of speaking out. It's because what is raised raises fundamental issues as to whether the laws of this nation need to be changed to protect individuals, whether we need to have that reform. And I respect that some senators have genuine reasons for wondering if a Senate inquiry is the right way forward. One concern that's been raised with me is that a Senate inquiry could somehow be seen to be some kind of religious witch hunt. Madam Acting Deputy President, nothing could be further from the truth. I understand the fears, but I truly believe those fears are baseless. The terms of reference in this new motion specifically say the inquiry is not to examine the beliefs of Scientology, only the behaviour of its members. It's there in black and white. And I would ask my fellow senators to consider what a slavish adherence to this stance might mean. If the Senate says we can't inquire into the behaviour of any organisation if it claims to be a religion, haven't we just given the green light to anyone who wants to be able to abuse others without scrutiny, without any accountability? Haven't we just told those people, do what you like, abuse people, coerce abortion, commit fraud, exploit children, break up families, incarcerate followers, and as long as you call yourself a religion, you can guarantee that we will look the other way? That may not be what this Parliament is saying, but I can tell you that's what some people are hearing. Is that what we were elected to do? Other senators have argued if there is evidence of criminal activity, people should go to the police. The problem is that in a number of jurisdictions in this country, some abuses are just not illegal. That the current criminal code, our laws, haven't kept up with the behaviour of these organisations. I've said that Jeanette Lang bravely spoke yesterday, and I read her full statement into the Hansard. Just a few metres, she spoke yesterday, just a few metres from here in the Senate courtyard, about how she was forced by Scientology bosses and by her Scientology boyfriend to have abortions. If she didn't, she was told she'd be cut off from her religion, her contacts, her support network, her husband, and she would die of cancer. And as she put it, it was her baby, her body, her choice, and Scientology took that all away from her. Is this appalling? Of course. Is this illegal in most places in Australia? The sad truth is probably not. What do you think would happen to Jeanette if she showed up in your average suburban police station with her story? Does anyone think seriously there could be an investigation, let alone charges? The problem with being here in this place is, as I see it, is that we can be all lulled into a false sense of security. There's a danger of thinking that just because we pass a law or another parliament passes a law, it will be enforced. But for most people, life doesn't happen in here, it happens out there. And out there, the victims of Scientology have suffered in silence for decades. The criminal law safeguards, some are quoting in here, haven't protected anyone out there. There are defects. People fall through gaping cracks in the system. Others have suggested critics pursued by Scientology should use stalking laws to protect themselves, but what happens if you are followed by a different person from the same organisation every day? There are no laws in this country to deal with institutional stalking like that. And yet critics of Scientology, ex-members and journalists say that's what happens. What are the victims to do then? The truth is, most politicians will be able to find an excuse not to act if they really want to, but over time excuses wear thin, especially with victims who continue to suffer. But I do want to acknowledge Senator Evans and Senator Abetz, in the very considered way they put forward their position, and I think there is a shift in the major parties in terms of dealing with this, because they know this issue won't go away. The victims of Scientology just want the opportunity to speak out safely. One suggestion was that the victims turn to the media. Well, some have, and some will continue to do so, and I promise you all now, I will help them as much as I can. But let's not pretend the media don't get worried about long and expensive, sometimes, albeit groundless, lawsuits that could cost the network millions of dollars and years of litigation, even where the stories are 100% true. Remember, this is an organisation that has spent tens of millions, possibly hundreds of millions of dollars over the years silencing its critics in the courts. Ex-members say that Scientology sees the bankrupting of a critic as a victory. Ex-members and other critics have also claimed to have been followed, harassed, blackmailed and threatened after speaking out. Don't we have an obligation to find a way to allow victims of Scientology to speak out safely? If we don't find a way to listen that will protect them, who will? So let me be clear. If this motion goes down, I will come back in the next sitting week with another motion. If that goes down, I will come back with another and another. And I'll also continue to engage with my colleagues, with Senator Abetz, with Senator Evans, about a way forward. If there is another way forward to deal with these grievances, then I will be happy to hear it and work collaboratively with my colleagues in relation to this. From what I'm being privately told, I believe those stories of suffering are starting to cut through with many of my colleagues, and I understand why. My office and I have been listening to these heartbreaking stories for the last 6 months. So my challenge to my fellow politicians is simple. If you vote this down, if you say no today, please come back to me, talk to me about a way forward. The victims of Scientology want to be heard, and I believe they deserve to be heard. It's time for all of us to stop thinking of new ways to say no and start thinking about better ways to say yes. It's time to stop talking about what we can't do and start talking about what we can do for these people. I commend this motion.
The question is then that the motion moved by Senator Xenophon be agreed to. Those of that opinion say aye. Those against say no. The noes have it. The ayes have it. Is there division required? Ring the bells then. Thank you. Order. The result of the division is 6 ayes and 33 noes. The motion therefore is not carried.